me know what you feel about these statements I'm about to say. Statements that deal with welfare. Tell me with a show of your voice whether you agree or disagree with the following statement. Statement number 1. We should put all welfare people to work cleaning up our cities and towns. Yeah. Welfare makes people lazy. Yeah. Too many young girls are having babies and using welfare to get their own apartment. Welfare is one of those things that pushes just about everybody's button one place or another. President Clinton is promising this year to end welfare as we know it. And it's going to be one of the hot topics in 1994. So today, we're going to hold our own town meeting on what should be done about welfare. And you are all my special guests. The welfare drain, next on Rolonda. Today, before we meet our guests, before we hear any stories, I want to get a read on just how our audience feels about welfare. We have community leaders in this audience. We have some welfare advocates, but mostly we have just regular tax-paying citizens. And I just want to know just what you're thinking when I say the word welfare. What comes to your mind? You, sir. Stand up for me.
Well, I think many people abuse the system. I think there should be stricter regulations with welfare. I think people who are struggling in this day and time, it's hard to find work. I think there are people who are deserving of it. But I live in this city and I've seen many people shopping in stores with food stamps, with diamond rings and fur coats.
Okay, so you think welfare is being an abused system?
I think many people abuse it.
Somebody else, what do you think of welfare? Come on.
Yeah, I believe that the welfare system should be cut and that people, if you need it, if you really need it, then you should be on it. But after a certain amount of time you're being on it, they should have like background checks to check on the people and make sure that they should get them jobs if they're able to get jobs. If you're disabled, it's one thing, but if you're really just lazy, they should be put to work.
What else? Somebody else on welfare. What do you think?
I work every day, 7 days a week, and a lot of times at 7:30 in the morning, I'm out the door and don't get home till real late that night. I try to house people, feed people, clothe people, keep people's heat on so they don't die in fires in their house during the winter. So don't tell me I don't do anything and people are lazy that are on welfare, because we're not. And there are no jobs to get. In Philadelphia, all the jobs are leaving to other countries. We have no jobs. You know, our unemployment.
I want to get back to you.
Unemployment is like 5 jobs, and everybody in Philadelphia has to fight for 5 jobs.
I want to get back to what you're saying, because you're having a lot of feelings there. But I want to get around and get a different set of opinions here.
Yes. We have people coming to our shores every day of the week that can't even speak the language, and they come over and work their butts off. And they do fine. People that live here and just abuse our system and don't do anything and make an excuse like that is just not acceptable.
Okay, welfare, what do you think about it?
I definitely think that if people need it, if they're in dire need, then they should receive it. But I think it's become a permanent lifestyle, and it should be more temporary help. Get help for a little while and then move on. Get schooling, get a job.
Okay, varying opinions here, varying opinions. And hold on, because I know there are other people who have something to say too. Before we go any further, I want you to welcome Sherry Hunkala and Joyce Brown. Joyce just got off welfare. Sherry is still on it. We're going to hear their stories in just a moment. Briefly, Sherry and Joyce, what is your reaction to what you're hearing about this whole thing? As you hear the different opinions,
I feel very saddened by some of the comments that I've heard because of the fact that the majority of people that receive public assistance are actually children. And I feel very frightened with the fact that some people are in favor of cutting them off, and as far as I'm concerned, sentencing them to a death.
And what about you? What do you think?
I agree 100%.
Does it hurt you when you hear these statements?
Some of the statements, it do, but I can understand what the audience is saying. I believe if a person is able-bodied, that they should work. But I believe that sometimes unfortunate situations happen in the lives of individuals that at that time, they may need some public assistance. And I believe that they should receive that assistance until they can do better. But
Yes.
definitely not abuse it.
Yes, I can sympathize with what the young lady is saying. I think most of all that we have to understand that we have to have some type of opportunity for these folks. A lot of these people that are on public assistance need some type of opportunity that is going to allow them to take these jobs of technology and things of the future. You just can't expect people to sit home. Most of these folks don't want to sit home. Most of these folks want to get out here and do
That's
something.
right. That's right. Anybody else for comment? Okay. All right. Sherry first got on welfare as a teenage mother, but she went to college, got her degree, and became a high school teacher. After all that, she landed right back on welfare rolls. We're going to talk about that story in just a moment when we come back. Welfare and welfare reform. So many times when we talk about welfare, we don't see the faces behind that word. Today we want to put some names and faces to the group of people we call welfare moms. Let's take a moment to hear Sherry and Joyce's stories. Sherry, let's start with you. How did you end up on welfare? We've just talked about how you were a teacher, you went and you got your college degree, you were on welfare, and because of those successes you got off, and then you ended right back up on it. So that's a story we need to hear. How did you start off ending up on welfare to begin with?
What ended up happening was that I was a teenage mother and needed some way to survive. I hadn't finished high school and needed some way to be able to feed my child. I was in a relationship with a man that was very abusive. He ended up leaving me alone with my child, and I became homeless and lived in a car when I was 16 with my child. And after one night, the car was totaled by a drunk driver, and that was my house that was gone. So I ended up sleeping basically in the streets in downtown Minneapolis and tried to figure out how I was going to survive. Well, I picked myself up by my bootstraps, went to high school, got myself through high school, continued on to put myself through college, and became a high school teacher. And I want to tell you what happened then. While I was going through college to get my degree to become a high school teacher, one day in my high school classroom, after I had been off of public assistance for 2 years, the sheriff's department came in, handcuffed me, put me in the back of a paddy wagon, and took me down to the police station, and I was being charged with 2 charges of welfare fraud, one for public assistance and one for food stamps. Why? Because while I was on welfare, I did not report the fact that I was going to college and receiving money for going to college. When you're on welfare, if you don't report even $5 that you're getting in, and the welfare department finds out about it, you can be charged with a felony and be put in prison.
So what do you think of a system that encourages you to get off, or does it? Maybe that's the question.
It doesn't. People don't understand how difficult it is, first of all, to find a job. You know, what's happening right now is a national crisis. I mean, it's not like welfare recipients in a vacuum. I mean, we have a national crisis in this country right now. People are fighting every day to get a job. And that's one issue in itself, not to mention discrimination, not to mention the fact that whenever you try and get any kind of help from the welfare department, they're always putting up another barrier in front of you in order for you to get off of welfare.
Question.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. I think there are a lot of jobs, possibly minimum wage. However, welfare includes food stamps, housing. These things cannot be covered by a minimum wage job. If the government would allow people to work at any job and subsidize that income in order for them to live, that would solve a lot of problems.
Any other comments? Yes.
Yes, I'm 24 years old, okay? I've been cooking with my dad since I was 8 years old, so you don't tell me about work, okay? I know how to work, okay? About this welfare, I mean, I'm on welfare right now, okay? I got 2 little daughters. For 2.5 months right now, I've been looking for a job. I haven't found no job yet. I could cook better than anybody in here, I bet you. But you know what? I can't find no job. You could give me a job, I'll go to work.
Go on, your response.
If I had a job to give you, I would certainly give you one. But I walk the streets of Manhattan every day, and there are signs in windows, waitresses, cooks, wanted.
I don't live in New York. I live in Philadelphia. Okay? Where it's harder, okay? You know, everybody says it's so easy to look for a job, okay? You know, they expect you to get up from the bed and just boom, right there. Okay, I won't do that.
Yes, I had a job, I had everything. I had a car, I had an apartment, I had everything. My job closed up. I was making $10 an hour. I am now a welfare recipient. You cannot make it. It's the system.
Okay.
It is the system.
Let's see another face of welfare. Joyce, let's hear your story. How did you end up on welfare?
Well, Rolonda, a few years ago, an unfortunate situation happened. My husband had always been a great provider for me and my family, but unfortunately, a situation happened and he was not in the home any longer. I didn't have any skills, so I ended up on welfare. But once I got in the system, I found out it was like a maze trying to get out. In the state of Wisconsin, where I'm from, there's a law, and it says that a woman or whoever is receiving AFDC does not even have to look for work until that child is 2 years old. So I went to my worker when my daughter was just a year old, and I said, look, you know, I've set some goals and I want to get off. I need some help. She said, well, Miss Brown, we will send you a letter when your daughter is 2 because it's not mandatory. And I was offended for the fact that she would even say such a thing because she see that I'm trying to get off.
So you wanted to get off of this?
I wanted to get off. So what happened is this. I said I was going to go back to school. I was going to get some skills because I wanted to support my family and be a role model for my children. I ended up going back to school. I got my high school diploma. I went back to my work again because I wanted to go through a vocational training school. So I ended up having to contact my state legislator because I couldn't get child care and I couldn't afford child care out of my welfare
So what
check.
eventually happened? You had
I ended up writing the governor of the state of Wisconsin pleading for help to get off.
Does that surprise anybody? What do you have to say? Can you stand up?
That's an individual case, but I also know how people pound the hound. At the end of the month, first of the month, they go down to the Greyhound in Chicago. They get their check in Illinois. They pay $10 for a round-trip ticket. They go to Wisconsin, the land of milk and honey. They double dip. They get another check. They come back, and they're riding high in the sky. I mean, it's Fat City, USA, while some sucker out there working a 9-to-5 is being taxed into oblivion while people are taking advantage of the welfare system, left ways, right ways, every which way, at our taxpayers' expense.
You know what? That is the percentage. That is a percentage. Yes, there are people taking advantage of the system, but there are people that are on the system because they've found themselves in a difficult situation. They're trying to get off.
And why aren't we ever talking about the real people that are taking advantage of the system, which is this welfare that's happening in this country? Not just poor people trying to struggle to feed, clothe, and house themselves. Why aren't we going after the S&L bailouts? Why aren't we going after other people like that?
I think there needs to be a better check and balance system for the people who are abusing the system. If people are abusing the system, there needs to be a tracking system of how long they've been on there, what they're doing, how many children they have, who's living in their household, what type of skills do they have. There needs to be more jobs, more job training, more education, and more equal opportunities as a whole.
That's right.
When plans were proposed to have fingerprinting for welfare recipients and their advocates refused to do so, and that would cut down on the cheating. The second question is, my wife and I plan very carefully our children because we recognize the economic cost of that, and I'm flabbergasted that so many people here on welfare have 2 or 3 kids and they're in their teens. And I think it's an outrage to expect taxpayers who plan ahead for these things to have to pay for your children and not have any say over putting your children into school, requiring your children to get the proper health care and education.
And we'll be right back after this.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode of Rolonda, and I hope that you'll subscribe and follow so many of my other activities on my Rolonda channel, including some stand-up comedy, some podcasts, some great auntie advice, and loads of laughs and lots of fun. So subscribe and stay tuned. Now, let's get back to the show.
To some people who have been on the welfare system, have struggled to get off of the welfare system, Sherry and Joyce. We've also talked about the last thing that the gentleman just said here. He said, you know, you plan all your time, you and your wife have planned to have your kids, you got your financial situation together, and what bothers you, you say, is watching teenagers on welfare having children and not planning for that financially. I'm sorry, wait a minute, let me get the mic to you.
And not having any responsibilities to care for them. They don't have to take them in for inoculations. They don't have to feed them. They don't have to make sure they go to school. They don't have to spend the welfare money.
Well, what do you think when your money's going toward the welfare system? What does that do for you?
I think it's an outrage. I think the whole welfare system should be thrown out, and we should start from scratch and rebuild a whole new system like they're trying to do in Wisconsin.
Come here. Wait, let me get around here to you. Come on, what are you saying?
I think it's our government's fault, and they've created it because it creates jobs. For instance, I'm finally off of welfare after 3 generations, got a job, almost became homeless again. I lost my 2 grandsons who are special ed, they're toddlers now, because the government preferred to place them in a stranger's home and pay them $2,000 a month instead of giving me a home health aid, which they were qualified for.
So what do you wish had happened?
There would have been more supervision. There would have been more support out there. Why separate them from the family that they know? Why keep the families apart? Now they're taking public money, you know, and we're living in a government where they prefer to use $60,000 a year to give a prisoner everything he needs instead of paying $30,000 for him to support his family, not to become a criminal.
Okay. On the telephone right now, calling into this studio from Minneapolis is another welfare mom who says that she is not looking for a job. She's not even going to try, because the biggest job that she's got in her life right now is raising her 6 children, staying at home. And she says that's just fine for her. She is Mary of the Mothers Union. Welcome, Mary. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Mary, what do you think when people say, oh, you're not trying to get a job, you're just sitting in there at home, not even trying, taking that welfare money?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I am doing a job, and that what's been considered to be women's traditional work, which is raising children, cultural maintenance, community building and activism, gardening, cooking, canning, all is very labor-intensive work, particularly when the children are young. I know women who nurse their children round the clock, and there's no compensation or remuneration for that. The Wages for Housework movement has put a dollar figure on the unwaged work of women in the U.S. at $1.5 trillion. That's what our value would be if it were included in the gross national product. So we really have a women's labor issue here and a child development issue, because what we're seeing is that American policy does not reflect what the developmental needs of children are. And if you look at the work of Dr. Selma Fredericksburg and people who know what normal child development is, children need mothering in the first 3 years
So, Mary,
of life.
welfare means to you what?
Welfare is an opportunity to bond with my children and to facilitate their growth. And I don't see any mother substitute who's capable of doing that. I also notice that welfare mothers often are the only adults on the block who are home, particularly in dangerous neighborhoods, who are there to protect the kids from gangs and from the warfare and the struggle.
Mary,
and
please hold. Mary, we got to let other people talk now.
You bet.
This is our show.
You bet.
The only thing I can think of is I'm having a hard time supporting myself. Why would you have 6 kids? I mean, there's contraceptives out there. You know, why would you allow yourself to have 6 kids?
Mary, that is a legitimate question from a man who may be helping pay for you to stay home and take care of those 6 kids. If you knew you couldn't afford it, why have 6 children?
Okay, first I want to say that welfare constitutes 1% of federal budget. Dollar for dollar is far less than you're spending on defense and many other things. My choice to have children is dictated by my cultural background and by the fact that when I had them, I was financially solvent and I had no control over the behavior of my former spouse. If a man chooses not to support his children, there's nothing that I can do about that.
Okay, Mary, we're going to get to those dads later, but first, New Jersey is one of the states in this union that is not waiting for President Clinton's reform package. In fact, New Jersey has a reform package of its own. Here to tell us about what's going on in New Jersey is Assemblyman Wayne Bryant. Welcome, Mr. Bryant. Well, nice to have you. So, what is the state of New Jersey saying? It's not waiting for Clinton, for sure. So New Jersey's saying what?
New Jersey scrapped the welfare system because it's a bankrupt system. It's a system of which I call economic slavery. It enslaves those who are on it, and it enslaves us, those of us who have to pay for it. What we've done is some very simple things. First of all, this nation was built on families, so we allow families to stay together, which the welfare system presently doesn't do. Secondly, we require a couple of things. Responsibility, meaning you must go back and get educated and get your GED. Refusal to go to school, you lose your benefits. 3 strikes and you're out. You're off for welfare for 2 years, and then you must go to job training. Thirdly, if you decide to increase your family, while you're on welfare, we will give you no additional benefits. You can go out and work and support that child. And these are just the basic, fundamental things that all the rest of us in this country live by.
So what do you think of that, folks?
I think people have to be held accountable, and I think that's a great idea because I teach, and I see young girls, 13, 14, 1 kid, 2 kids, and by the time they're 18, I don't know how they could ever manage. And if they were held accountable and they weren't given something like that, maybe they would think twice.
How has it worked for New Jersey? What's the response been?
In New Jersey, our response so far in the last year and a half has been quite admirable. I mean, right now we have in one county alone, about 500 women who are in county colleges are earning technical degrees to go to work. We have folks who are earning on the average who are out there now at about $7 an hour. And we've kept about 30% of the families together, and therefore they're growing up with 2-parent families as opposed to single-parent families.
Sherry, you're shaking your head. You don't seem to...
This is so typical. People making choices for women's own reproductive choices and lives. And I think it's too bad because the thing I want to say is what is going to happen. So let's say this woman has a child. By the way, I have 1 child, and most recipients have 1 or 2 children. So let's get rid of that stereotype.
That's right.
The second thing is this, is that just because you have money shouldn't be the only thing that determines whether or not you have a right to have children in this country.
In New Jersey,
you have a right to have a child, but if you can afford to have that child, then you have that child. What can you give that child when you're on welfare? You don't have the money to give them.
You know what? I agree with you.
I have
but
one
don't
daughter.
you sentence a baby to death by not feeding it.
No, we're not sentencing a baby to death. But you make sure before you have that baby, you can feed that baby.
Listen,
okay. I would like to make
And we'll be right back after this. Is the fact that anybody could end up on welfare. No one is immune to this system. You let your husband leave you and you find out you get that pink slip. Where are you going to be? You may be surprised how you end up there. Hello.
I'm a tax. Okay, Paul.
Excuse me.
I'm a taxpayer, and I have no problem supporting Mary and her 6 children because those children later on will not be a burden in our society with crime and all of the other things. However, I do not know the New Jersey system, nor do I know the Philadelphia system. I know the ineffective New York City system. You have people in the bureaucracy who do not go out there, they do not investigate, and it's the welfare cheats. In this city, we have people receiving full welfare benefits while they are receiving a full salary off the books. You have young mothers who go rent an apartment, have a child, go back to their home. They own homes, their family-owned homes. They go back to that so that they could bring income in. And our society is supporting that right here in New York City. And when you report it to the investigation unit of the HRA, they do nothing about it.
Well, I think fraud is fraud, whatever system that is. That's for
That's
sure.
the problem.
But as you talk about the different systems, let's go through some of the different things, because it's changing in different states in different ways. After decades of complaining about the welfare system, it looks like some of those changes are on the way. We just spoke with Assemblyman Bryant, who was telling us that New Jersey is saying no extra money for any woman who has a baby while she's on welfare. We also, in Ohio, for instance, welfare teen mothers get docked money if they don't go to school. They get more money if they do. Let's take a look at Georgia, for instance. Georgia says that unmarried mothers under the age of 18 will not get welfare unless they live with a parent or a guardian. And just 2 weeks ago, the state of Wisconsin, your state there, Joyce, enacted a new law called Work Not Welfare, which practically proposes to eliminate welfare altogether by the year 1999. So we're seeing all of these changes happening. Brian, anything else that you could say about that?
Well, welfare ought to be a temporary system that retools people so that they can become productive. It ought not be a way of life. And unfortunately, the way we have it, we set up a way of life. The reason we decided not to pay for additional children, no one in our society, no matter where you work, you automatically get a raise because you have a child. And therefore, we ought not have that in the welfare system, to end up inculcating in them the value that if you have additional children, you're going to get additional income. We allow you to work. You want to support that kid while you're on welfare and while we're retooling, go to work.
Comment.
I'm just curious. You know, New Jersey has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. What are you training these people to do?
Well, one of the things you must understand is if you go to the welfare rolls in New Jersey, what you'll find is most of them have very, very poor education. So the first thing, and that's why ours is educationally based, we don't fool ourselves that you can't get a good paying job unless you're educated. So we require you to go get your GED, but that's responsibility. Your failure to go to school or failure to try while you're in school, you lose your benefits in New Jersey. That's what we're talking about.
In the state of Wisconsin, Governor Thompson's implementing work, not welfare. But in the state of Wisconsin, they need work. Unemployment is at an all-time high rate all around the country. All you hear is, you know, that we need jobs. A lot of these people want to get off welfare, but they need skills, they need training, they need child care. How is a mother going to work a minimum wage job and pay child care, just say she has a child under the age of 2?
Well,
for that child, that's $135 a week. Tell me how she's going to support a
Let me tell you
child.
what we're doing in New Jersey. We're requiring you first to go back and get some education.
I agree.
Okay, and you got to do that.
Oh, yes.
Number two is that then we're going to end up training you for jobs, and you got to want to do that. And thirdly, what we say is while you get your job, we do provide Medicaid and we provide daycare for 2 years to give you a head start in life. But you got to be willing to want to do some things for yourself. Responsibility on the part of it, and you can't hide behind your kids to say, I don't want to be responsible. My wife, after 6 months, after she had a child, went back to work. Why? We could not afford not to have her working.
You know, I
Why
agree.
should someone else not have that same responsibility as the rest of them to work?
There
while
should be
you-
responsibility. There should be responsibility.
But we'll be right back in just a moment, right after this. Bugs me about this whole situation is where is the other parent? Where is the father who's supposed to be in the house helping raise the children? You know, I'd like you to meet a woman who believe very much the same things that I'm talking about. She's called the bounty hunter in a lot of places. She has some views on how to cut down the number of people on welfare. Charlene Dunbar, welcome. Welcome here. She's kind of like what you might call a private collector. She goes out and she collects deadbeat dads or deadbeat parents, there are deadbeat moms out there too, who are refusing to pay child support. And you say that there's a way to avoid this whole system, and that's by doing what?
Well, most of these individuals that go on welfare, Rolonda, are forced on it because an ex-spouse may run to another state, and state and county agencies fail to go after these individuals or locate them or prosecute them. If they would go after these parents as aggressively as they possibly, well, they went after her, wouldn't that be nice? But they don't want to. So
And what difference would that make if they did? What kind of difference monetarily would that make?
Well, I don't think we would have $27 billion owed in child support, which is a staggering amount of money owed to our children.
Which is about very close to the same amount of money that it takes to run the welfare system.
Exactly, exactly. But the way I feel about it, if you go after that ex-spouse, I think it would give that parent and those children an opportunity to recover from a divorce. In my own case, I was definitely a welfare candidate. The reason I didn't go on it, I lived a certain lifestyle and it wasn't a choice for me at that time. So my children became latchkey kids at that time, 6, 9, and 11. So I did what I had to do to keep them in a certain lifestyle.
So your own personal story was one of a woman who was in a situation that you could have well been on welfare, and you said, doggone it, not me.
No.
I'm not going to do that.
It wasn't for me, and I fought back by going to the county agencies and said, do something. You know where he lives, you know where he works, you know what kind of a car he drives. Go after him. But their excuse was, well, he lives in Dallas, Texas. What can I do? And I couldn't understand that, because in my mind I thought, well, I told you where he is. What do I have to do? Take you to his house? He owes me this child support. And by the time I finally did get my child support, it was up to over $40,000. And I was the first woman in Ohio to file criminal non-support on her ex-spouse.
I agree with, I'll sit down this time.
Okay.
I agree with Ms. Dunbar. I don't know where you're from, Ms. Dunbar, but I know that exact problem happens in this city here in New York City. I'm an elected official. I have walked into a local welfare agency where they're supposed to open up at 9 a.m. in the morning. At 9:30, I have seen mothers with children in their arms outside, walked into the offices to investigate them, opened the door, excuse me, and found social workers doing crossword puzzles, having coffee, having conversations with each other, not addressing the people out there, the recipients who really need the help. The investigative units are terrible. If they were to come out in this city, walk with me hand by hand, I could round up 10 fathers, deadbeat fathers per day.
So why don't they do it? If here's a situation that it could cut into the budget that the taxpayers are spending, I mean, why don't people go after? Why are they leaving it up to you to go after deadbeat dads?
A lot of it, Rolonda, is because of bureaucratic red tape. They talk about their heavy caseload. Again, we're paying these people with our tax dollars, too, to sit on their butts all day long, not to go after these deadbeat
Would it have
parents.
made a difference to you, Joyce and Sherry, if someone was out there making the man in your life pay for the child support that he owed your children?
Well, the man in my life was paying for the child support, but I just need to say this and get this off my chest. I just get sick and tired of hearing people bash on people who are on welfare, because you may be working today, but you may be on welfare next year. You never know what's going to happen in your life. And so it's a very sensitive issue. I'm a taxpayer too, but at one time I needed assistance, and I just get sick and tired of that. I think it's unfair. I really do.
And this national crisis is not going to be solved on the backs of poor fathers in this country. I'm talking about also there's unemployed fathers who are forced from the welfare department not to be fathers to their children. And they go after particularly poor minorities and poor communities where fathers cannot get jobs, who love their children just as much.
But I think part of the system is just corrupt. Corrupt.
Yes. No, I just want to respond to the issue with fathers not paying support. I'm a former welfare recipient. And during the time I was collecting public assistance, I had went through the court system to collect monies for child support, and it was awarded, but to the Department of Social Service. I never saw a dime of the money, okay? And my ex at that time, he was working for the city, for the Board of Ed, and he was in a position where he could have supported the children with no problem, but I got absolutely no assistance. I had to struggle to get off.
One of the things that kind of scares me as I listen to all this is remembering what welfare was set up for, and that was to give assistance to our families who are in need until they get over those difficult times.
That's not,
I just never...
That is not true.
Well?
Welfare was established to help women who actually had a tragedy in their life, who actually lost their husbands as minors. And therefore, they put that same system to help widowers on an intact family and destroyed the family by forcing the father out of the household. That is really what's happening in America.
So what you're saying is that welfare wasn't established to help families in a situation to help them get through a difficult time.
Only where a woman's husband died. They were an intact family, died in died in mining, and to help them with their young kids. Then we took that same system and placed it on intact families and said to fathers, if you stay home, your kids will not eat, they will not live as well, so you ought to leave the family. So after about 4 generations, you start to find out folks say there is no reason to be married, there is no reason to have family. And therefore, you start to see the disintegration of the family. Most folks in America don't know that you get about 30% less if the husband stays in the household. In New Jersey, we put the family back together. That is the wholesome way in order to raise and develop a community.
And we'll continue our talk of welfare reform when we come back.
So I hope you're enjoying this episode, and I hope you will subscribe and continue to enjoy. Just wanted to let you know that my voice acting masterclass is now digital. If you are somebody who's interested in being a voice actor, please go check it out. Go to Rolonda.com, Rolonda.com. That's my website, and you can check out all the details and even enroll in my voice acting masterclass. Hey, you'll never know how good you are until you try. Now, let's get back to the show.
Welfare mothers say that people are just picking on them because they're easy targets. What do you think about that?
I think that a lot of people don't understand how it is to be on public assistance and have to live in public housing. I know hundreds of people who are glad to have that roof, that public assistance roof over their head, but not glad to have it. They're glad to get that check every month, but not glad that they have to have it, okay? And as far as the welfare people bashing, I think that's a lot due to the media. For 363 days a year, you hear about the abusers, the people who go shopping in stores with their welfare checks. 2 days out the year, Christmas and Thanksgiving, you hear the story about old poor Wanda or somebody who really needs it. 363 days, it's all the negative things about welfare. And for you, Senator, maybe your program is very good if we were starting welfare today. But you have 3 generations, 4 generations of people. What's going to happen to them?
Yeah, you know, that is true. What does happen to them? Because you start talking about just getting rid of welfare altogether, a lot of people are very afraid they're not going to have a place to live. They're not going to have food to feed their children with. I mean, how do you...
By the grace of God, anybody might need help, but they also have to stand up and be responsible and want to do some things for themselves. You have to have responsibility as an integrated part of any program. You cannot say that folks are not going to go back, do something about education or job training. They got to do something for themselves.
And you say what?
Well, I have a couple comments. One is I've only been on welfare for 5 months, and I'm due any day. So I had planned this, and we were middle-class family.
And what happened to you?
Our jobs got lost and things like this because of the economy. That's the first thing. The second thing, for people to think that people have babies for more money to make money off welfare, we were just discussing on the ride down here that it's $60 a case for formula is the cheapest you can get. You get $40 a month extra in your welfare check for your child.
So what you're saying is...
That doesn't even cover food. You know, so, I mean, they're not having babies to get more money. You can't get rich off welfare.
Joyce, what happens... What happens to you? I know that you have fought to get off welfare, you're off welfare, but that's going to mean a change in your life. What are some things you lose now?
It was a big change, and one of the biggest changes was I lost my medical assistance. I have a good job. Matter of fact, I work for an organization that reaches out to help women who are on AFDC, and I thank God for that. But right now, I don't even have not child care, but medical assistance.
And you don't have child care either, do you think?
Yeah. And child care either. No.
When we come back, we'll continue this conversation on welfare. Welfare reform and some of the changes that are going on. Curtis Lee, well, many of you may know him from one of the founders of the Guardian Angels, but you beat the streets of this big city. You see lots of poverty. You see lots of families in difficult situations. What do you think as you listen to this? What do you think?
I'm ready to take out the violins, but I know on the first of the month there's more boozing, toking, tooting, smoking, doping going on with a lot of those checks. The fast Charlies out there who have high levels of testosterone don't know how to keep their rocket in their pocket, jump from female to female and get a cut of their check. And many of the women won't divulge the name of whose father that child is because they want to cover up.
Small
Well, no.
percentage.
You're
That's a
painting
small
all one
percentage.
side of a picture
That's a small
because there are
percentage.
1,000,001 scams to welfare with those food stamps. You're not supposed to be able to buy booze or cigarettes or dope. Drug dealers take food stamps. You can get 75 cents on the dollar.
Listen.
And you know all those scams exist.
Feeding, clothing, and housing my child, first of all, is not up for
We're
debate.
not talking about
I'm
you
not-
in particular.
Not just me. I'm
Aren't
a part
you
of a
aware of
national
scams and welfare?
Okay,
Wait a
one
minute.
at a time. I'm a part of a national organization which is called the National Welfare Rights Union. We're a bunch of serious people who are unemployed, who cannot stand being on welfare, who want to get off of welfare, but want to fight for the rights of all human
This is
beings
all
to have a
America
right to have
wants. Can I
food,
tell you
clothing,
what
and
America
housing.
wants?
No
Wait,
matter
very
what
simple.
color you are,
Could you ask
no
this
matter
young man
what
to
you
stand
look
up?
like.
It's not a mother that I have a problem. You stand up. You know what I want to see? All I want to see you is get a hefty trash bag. Go along the side of a highway, pick up a little bit of trash each day, 3 or 4 hours, and you can keep your check.
Well,
but I want to see you work.
I used to
for
work
your
12
check.
hours a day.
I wanna
12
see
hours a
work.
day, 6 days a week. So you don't tell me how to buy the
Should
work,
you
okay?
be sitting at home
Okay,
collecting a check?
I never sat home, okay? Since
One
I
at
was
a
8 years
time.
old.
Working for
One
that
at a
check?
time.
I work for that check.
What do you do?
Okay, right now, I'm
do you
looking
do?
for a job.
But wait a second. In the meantime, half a day could be spent cleaning up a highway,
No,
painting over
I do-
graffiti,
Wait,
and the other half a day looking for a job.
While we're talking about testosterone here, all right, please, can we just lower the roar to a little rumble here so we can all understand? Now, here's a father who's got 2 kids. He's one of the rarities that we've seen, at least in our audience tonight, as a man who is a welfare dad. We know this is a sensitive issue to you because you're talking about raising your children, but I want you to keep your voice down so we can hear your side.
Okay, you got 2 of your gentlemen here today. Okay, God forbid, okay, one of them gets shot in the head, landing in the hospital in a coma. Let's say they're there for like 5, 6 months.
And the point?
Okay, the point is that bill's gonna be $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. What are they gonna? Are you gonna give them that money, or are you gonna go to welfare and try to get the money for them? What are you gonna do?
If somebody is physically incapable, obviously we want government to sustain them. But if you're able to walk and talk and breathe, and you're physically strong like you are, when I see garbage and graffiti and other things that need to be done in America, I'll train you for a new job half a day, but I want to see you go out there and bust your tail the other half of the day, and I think that's fair. That's fair.
In reference to reform, and I believe in Jersey, the guy that spoke about reform, because in fact it helps, you know, the education is very important. That's definitely the key, because if the next generation see that their mother's working and going to school and doing something, that motivates that child, and that child would then in the next generation, anyway, education. So definitely education is definitely key.
And we'll be right back. Of a town meeting. That's what we wanted to do. We got the juices flowing here. Boy, this is quite a subject to talk about. Just in closing, Sherry, I couldn't help but notice all throughout the show today, when you spoke from the heart, your voice almost cracking. Does it hurt you to have to talk about your life on welfare?
Yes, it does, because I don't think people understand, unless they've lived it before, what it is to live way below the federal poverty level. You have no idea. Every day is like scraping to figure out how I'm going to feed my child, and that's what it's about. And the thing that I basically want to say is, welfare recipients, don't be ashamed. We are somebody. We deserve to eat. We deserve to have a house over our head, and so do our poor babies.
And Joyce, you say what?
I would like to say that I feel that America needs to be more sensitive to those who are on AFDC, and that you may be working today, but tomorrow you may be in a welfare line.
And that's something worth talking about. Go out and talk about it. See you next time on Rolonda.